Hey guys, welcome back to Broken Journey, the podcast. I am your host, Elba Rivera. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you are having a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Whenever it is that you're listening to this podcast, I hope that your day has been going well so far and that it continues to go well. In this episode, I talk a little bit about domestic violence. And although October, we think about Halloween, we think about pumpkins, and we think about pumpkin spice latte, there is more behind the month of October. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Bye. Hey guys, I wanted to talk about the month of October. I know that a lot of people, when they think about the month of October, they think about fall leaves, pumpkins, pumpkin spice lattes, and Halloween, and the start of the holidays, right? After Halloween. But did you know that the month of October is also Domestic Violence and Breast Cancer Awareness Month? I am going to be honest with you. I didn't know that Domestic Violence Awareness Month was the month of October. And I just found that out several years ago. I'm going to say about 8 years ago or so. And to think about it, it's very scary. I went on to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence website, and the numbers are truly shocking. Truly shocking. As a child of a domestic violence parent, I'm grateful that I broke this generational cycle where I was not abused by any of my partners. But not everybody has that privilege, right? Not everybody will be that way. Sometimes the cycle keeps going where the parents are violent and then the children become violent, and when they are in their relationship and grown, and the cycle continues and continues. And I'm just grateful that I was able to break that cycle. But I wanted to take some time to put this information out there because I think it's very important. I'm seeing so many things on the news in the past year of violence against women, against men. And, a lot of the times when you think domestic violence, you think about women more than you do men. And statistics show that men are abused as well. However, a lot of the men don't really talk about their abuse. Why? Because some of them are afraid to be labeled as a punk, a wuss, or pendejo, or, whatever the case may be, right? And so a lot of the times men will stay shut about domestic abuse until it gets to a point where they kill their abusers, right? And it also happens with women as well, where they're to the point where they can't take it anymore and they feel no other option but to kill that other person, which is their abuser, right? So I wanted to go into some of the information that I got off the website. And some of this information is a little shocking, right? 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men experience sexual violence, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime, with related impacts such as being concerned for their safety, PTSD symptoms, injury, or needing victim services. And so victim services can also be medical attention. It could be going into a domestic violence shelter, right? And then approximately 1 in 5 female victims and 1 in 20 male victims need medical care. Female victims sustain injuries 3 times more often than male victims. And then 23% of women and 13.9% of men have experienced severe physical violence by an intimate partner during their lifetime. And when we think about victims of domestic violence, a lot of the times we think about physical assault, battery. But do you realize that victims are also sexually assaulted? They're stalked by their exes because they've decided to escape that situation. And then there's the mental abuse. Sometimes people are not physically abused, right? They're mentally abused or they're financially abused. And those are some of the other, situation of abuse, right? And so when we think about sexual assault, I was reading where from 2016 to through 2018, 146% of victims were assaulted. And I was like, what? So this is 2016 through 2018. I'm hoping that the statistics now is lower. But I was completely shocked by the fact that it has increased by 146%. And nearly 1 in 5 women and 1 in 12 men have experienced contact sexual violence by an intimate partner. And sometimes those are things that are not physically seen, right? And if that person is constantly feeling that abuse, that's something that they would have to tell you because that's not something that you can physically see, right? Then we also have the stalking of an abuser and the victim who has decided to leave, right? The abuser will come back looking for them, threatening them, harassing them, and sometimes ultimately killing them, right? 19.1 million women and 6.4 million men in the United States have been stalked. 66.2% of female stalking victims reported stalking by a current or former intimate partner. 1 in 10 women and 1 in 50 men have experienced stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime. The abusers know how to wing their way into a person's life when they have low self-esteem, when they feel like they are um, when they feel like they are in need of love because of the way that they were, the way they grew up and things like that. But sometimes that's not even the case. Sometimes that person has a good upbringing. Sometimes, that person has not had a terrible childhood and things like that, right? But some of these abusers know how to they know how to control the person little by little. And I'm sure that there are red flags, right? And sometimes, when you're in love or you're blinded by some of this stuff, you don't realize it until you're so deep in that hole, you don't know how to get out, right? And those are some of the situations that some people are in, right? Some people are not It's not because they had, a background. And, I just think that we cannot prejudge people because of the fact that they are in a domestic violence situation, because we don't know exactly how it started, right? And we can say, well, I will never allow someone to do this. I will never allow this and this and this and that. But until you're in that situation, I guess you don't know, right? And I'm not condoning the abusers, because that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that instead of judging that person for being in that abusive relationship, try to figure out how you can help that person, how you can educate that person little by little, and letting them know that it's not okay to be abused, right? And so moving on, there's also that mental abuse where, again, the person takes over how they're talking to them. The person will abuse them in ways such as, like, um telling them that, they're the best thing that ever happened to them, that they will not find anybody who will love them the way that they love them, that, you know um I'm trying to think of ideas. Again, have not been in a domestic violence relationship, but from things that I have seen, things that I have heard from other people, um, those are some of the things that they say to them, right? And make them seem like the abuser is the best thing that happened to them in their life. And so, moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about the homicide about it, right? 1 in 2 female murder victims and 1 in 13 male murder victims are killed by their intimate partners. And 65% of all murder suicides are perpetrated by intimate partners. 96% of murder suicide victims are female. Most intimate partner homicides are committed with firearms. When I think about, the abusers, when they have access to firearms, that is probably what increases that 96%, right? Um, because they have additional access besides their physical hands, which is dangerous too. And then there's also the financial abuse, right? So when we look at, the impact that it does when it comes to finances, that's also another situation that people are not aware of, right? So let's say that the abuser and the victim have one account. A lot of the times, the abuser will control the money and only give them like an allowance, let's say, and not give them access to a card, right? And we're not talking about being in a relationship where somebody, um, where one partner is a spender and one is a saver, and they're trying to control the fact that the person is going crazy spending all the money. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the fact that this person controls every aspect of this person financially, right? Controls what they give them, controls what they are able to use financially. They There's a situation where the abuser will go to the person's job and cause a chaotic scene, and the person gets, fired from their job, so they're codependent on the abuser, right? And then that's how the abuser will go and control every aspect financially of that person. Between 21 and 60% of victims of intimate partner violence lose their jobs due to reasons stemming from the abuse. Again, going back to the finances, they will go into that person's job and cause a scene, do whatever it takes to get that person fired, right? And then I was looking at something else here where it says between 2003 and 2008. Now, this is pretty far back, but 142 women were murdered in their workplace by former or current intimate partners. And so sometimes we need to dig a little deeper. And some of these victims are sometimes not willing to talk, which is understandable, for fear that, something will happen, right? But I wanted to also talk a little bit about some of the warning signs, right? Because sometimes people don't realize, or they're so into the infatuation stage that they don't see beyond what they want to see, right? And I'm not saying this is for everyone, right? This is more of signs from an abuser, right? So I'm going to say a few warning signs of an abuser, some red flags that you might want to pay attention to. I'm not going to say everything that's on this list, but you can go onto the website and check signs of abuse, and the list is there. But some of the red flags are things that are common, right? They're very, very common, and you want to pay attention to this. So, for instance, number one is extreme jealousy. When the person is very, very jealous of anything that you do, right? Possessiveness, when they want to be very possessive over you. A bad temper, when they blow something out of proportion. The verbal abuse is another one that's, very common in that situation. Controlling the finances is, again, another one that's a serious red flag, right? Um, when you are embarrassed or humiliated in front of other people, harassed at your workplace, or some of the other ones, um, accusations of the victim flirting with others or having an affair. Those are some signs of abuse that, sometimes we may brush off. Oh, oh, he's jealous, that means that he loves me. No, no, mm-mm, no. I understand that there might be a little signs of jealousy here and there, but when it's to the extreme, that is definitely a red flag. But anyway, guys, um, these, but anyway, guys, this information is out there again on the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I will have that information on my show notes. And also, I wanted to tell you, if you or somebody you know are a victim of domestic violence, there are different ways that they can seek help, right? One is they can text Loveis, and that's one word, Loveis, to 22522. Again, that's 22522. Or they can go on to ncadv.org/get-help. And there's a hotline that they can call, and it's 1-800-799-7233. Again, that's 1-800-799-7233. Guys, if you know someone who is in this situation, or if you listening are in this situation, Seek help as soon as possible. I hope this information has helped you. And if you know someone who might be in a domestic violence situation, share this information with them. Share this podcast with them. Tell them that they can get help and to no longer be afraid. Bye, guys.